Hi there, Graham from Penguin Motors here. Welcome you to a lovely sunny Ely and this rather lovely Cameron Green Rover P6. Right, so what brings this fine example to me? Well, if you hadn't guessed, we only have half an engine. Client recently purchased it, got it home from auction or wherever it came from and found all was not well. I believe he found it was only running on 7, did a compression test and found cylinder with no compression. So we've only got 7 pistons. Number 6 is missing. I haven't found it, you looked at it yet, but I'm told we've got broken rings. The engine's obviously been to bits in the past because we've got what looks to be a very recent timing chain. We've also got composite head gaskets. Now, I quite like composite head gaskets, but on a 9.25 to 1 engine, they're not a good choice because they will drop the compression down to around 8.5 to 1. So, yeah, in fact, really, we want to go the other way. We want to bring the compression up a bit if we want to make it a bit lively. So, it's in for a rebuild. We need to pull it the rest of the way out and strip it down. What can I do already? Well, just looking at the cam lobes up the front end of the engine here, I can see on the base circle there's 2 lines, which clearly means the lifter that came out of that was badly dished. So, for sure, we're going to need a camshaft. Feeling the cylinder bores, I'd say we're going to need a rebuild. Looking at the oily guns of the pistons, it's been burning oil and it's generally dirty. So what are we going to do for it? Well, basically we're going to do a standard refresh. The owner's talked about a mild cam. I think being an automatic, the biggest cam we should put in there is a standard 3.9. And the reason I say that is because automatics most want torque at low speed, and I've found that there's no real improvement in torque from going aftermarket at low speeds. So I think we'll just stick with a 3.9 cam. I might tickle the heads a little and possibly give it a little more compression. If we end up needing a rebore, then if I can find some 9.75 to 1 pistons, half a ratio compression will give it a nice little bit of extra get up and go. So that's that bit. I think we should get it in the workshop out in the sun because it's baking out here. I said I was going inside, but I haven't yet. I went round to the back of the car and I see lots of boxes inside it, so I thought I'd open one. And in here we've got a cylinder head, which looks to me like it's been recently refaced. But look at the colour of them combustion chambers. Very oily, so it's definitely burning oil. And it looks to me like it's been, burning a lot of oil and running rich. And we've got a rocker shaft. Wear on the pads isn't too bad. If I pull a rocker back, that's quite scratchy there. Oh, that's nasty. There's a lot of wear there. So, unfortunately, this is only fit for the bin. And a lot of people will put new rocker shaft in and reuse the old rockers. That's a bad move because what happens is the metallic grit from the wall rocker shafts ends up embedded in the rockers, and that makes the rocker abrasive. So you put that old rocker on the new shaft, the rocker will wear the shaft. The shafts are the right way up, because if you weren't aware, you can assemble the rocker assembly the wrong way up, and there's a little notch there that shows up. If you put them the wrong way up, what happens is that hole there, which is strategically placed to lubricate the rocker, ends up the wrong side. Now that has 2 effects. One, it doesn't put the oil where it needs to, but because of the cam and the valve springs pushing up, that creates clearance at the top between the rocker and the shaft, which is where the oil feed ends up if the shaft is upside down. So it looks great on principle because when you run the engine, there's loads of oil at the top of the engine. But in practice, you're not getting the oil where you need it at the bottom, and worse than that, you're starving the bottom end of the engine of oil. So, top tip: rocker shafts, make sure that little notch is at the top of an assembled set of shafts. Well, while I'm out here, I might as well go look see if there's anything in the boot. Right, sorry about this. We completely lost the audio at this point. So yeah, here we are. Here's the missing number 6 piston. And boy, does that ring flap around in that groove. And if I rotate the piston and then rotate the ring, we can see that ring groove is truly, truly enormous. That's huge. Right, let's get the ring off. Right, drop the ring. While I'm looking for the ring, I'll explain that amount of wear that's usually caused by dirty oil, and dirt and the oil sits in the ring groove of the piston, and that agitates and wears the ring away. Look at the wear on that ring. That's almost a dyke ring with that L shape to it. So YouTubers, here we are. We're now in the workshop. Our Cameron Green P6 is sitting there under its cover. We've got the engine out, although it wasn't a lot of engine to take out. What can I say? Well, we need a new engine mount. I've removed the big end nuts, but I haven't pulled any more pistons out yet. So I'm just going to give these a tap. No, I've took the big end nuts off, and I've given a gentle tap with a copper mallet so as not to damage the threads. That's quite a good looking shell. It's standard. It's an AE. It doesn't look all that old to me. It's a number punch, I dropped it. Don't know if the camera can pick that up. Look at that. There's a lot of wear in that ring and ring groove. Don't have a lot of blow by. Camera gear looks good. Or should I say distributor drive gear, oil pump drive gear. Need some leverage. Timing gear's new, as is the chain. It's run, but not for long. So we'll probably put them to one side and reuse those. Didn't pull the cam out. Well, it has got 16 lobes. Very rounded, that one though. Yeah. The cam lobes are all looking pretty flat, but they were all actually opening a valve. But yeah. Only one place for this now, and that's the scrap bin. And look at the mains. That's concerning, they were loose. Now, I haven't undone these, but the car came to us with the sump already removed, so possibly the owner did. Oh look, copper. What we would expect. Which the fact that the mains are on copper, 100% says to me the big end shells have been changed. So having zoomed you in a bit, what can we see? We can see, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, that's quite heavily scored, those mains. And what happens is with dirty oil, the dirt gets trapped in the bearing and becomes abrasive and rubs and scores away at the crank. Without doubt, this crank is going to need a regrind. So, what do we know? Well, most of our engine parts have been for a hot wash now, and we know the pistons are knackered, the rings are worn. But looking down one of the rods appears to be bent. So, I thought I'd just push the pistons off and have a visual look at the rods. They've got to come off anyway. One rod. Now this is the rod that looks bent. If I look down the beam, it appears to veer off to one side. Now that could be an optical illusion because obviously the rods have an offset to suit the big end journals. So they lay one piston back, one piston forward. So that could be an optical illusion, but to me it looks like this rod's going this way. I'll see if I can get it on camera so you can see. Right, did you see that? It looks like it's going off to one side. I mean, it might be bent and still okay because it could be it was made that shape, and when it was bored and machined for final fitting, the machining corrected it. So it might be bent, it might not be bent, it might be bent and be okay, it might be bent and be not okay. What I've done, I've blued it up with some engineer's blue. And I'm going to give it a rub on a flat surface, on a bit fine, wet and dry. See if we can get a clue. Obviously, because the offset, one side will sit flush, the other won't, but we give it a rub on that surface. We might see an offset, a bend, because it should rub all of that surface and all that surface. And if it misses a bit here, then you think it probably is. Not terribly accurate, but it's a visual guide. I use engineer blue, but you can do it with a permanent marker pen. Right, let's go and find something flat. Right, what we've got here is a big disc of metal. It's fairly flat. It's by no means a proper flat surface, but it's fairly flat. Sheet of glass would be good as well. So you know, it's hardly the same as a flat pad or table engineer or granite stone, precision granite engineer might use. But anyway, we've got a rod, it's blued up. I've got a bit of 600 wet and dry paper.
And if you can see that has took blew off there, some of there, and all of there. Slightly inconclusive, but I would have expected it to have touched there as well. Let's give it a bit more of a rub. Again, that surface is really clean. It's cleaned up the bottom, it's just touched there. It's touched there, but it's not cleaned it as much. Yeah, maybe it's an optical illusion, maybe it isn't, but I'll have the rods checked for straightness and dimension anyway, so it'll either be put right, a very fractional bend can be pressed straight and realigned. Any more, the rod will be scrap. But hey, let's see what comes back.
Right, cylinder heads. Here's we can see the coked up one. This one's clean, and all I've done here is to clean off the remnants of the composite gasket. Thinking they'd be faced, which clearly it has. I didn't want to sand or scrape the gasket off, so I got myself some Loctite gasket remover. And to be honest, from the smell of it, I think it's nothing more than paint stripper. But it worked quite well. It's simply splat on, let it soak in, and to remove it, I used a soft stainless steel brush, because I can scrub the gasket off without doing harm to the surface. Yeah, so I'm going to leave that to soak for a minute and see if we can get a result fairly quickly. This takes a little while to work, though. So while that's soaking, let's go back to conrods. And in particular, bent conrods. Now, everyone that's looked at this conrod has said that is visibly bent. Well, the rod's been off, and they've been down to the machine shop, and they have been straightened. And they've also been resized. Now, the rod still visibly looks bent, and I imagine that's a case of it was made that way, but when they bored the holes, they corrected the bend with a boring. But anyway, so it looks bent, but it is now mechanically straight. I say, and quite importantly, for bearing crush, we've had the rods resized, which simply means you take the cap off, you grind a bit off to two faces, you clamp it back together, and then you hone it back to the correct size. Now, the correct size and shape in there is important because it's only the crush that stops the bearing shell spinning. The tags have got nothing to do with that, that's just location. Most modern engines don't use tags. So that's the rods. Right, we had 5 minutes for it to soak. Nice and steamy, but nice and clean. Right, here we have our head, nice and clean. Now, something that immediately comes to notice is the exhaust valves are fairly proud of the chamber face, which is a little unusual. Let me see if I can zoom you in so you can see. Right, hopefully I've zoomed you in a bit so you can see that that valve is actually fairly proud of the face, which is slightly unusual. Let me just grab another head. This is just an old one I've randomly pulled from our stores.
and you can see that is sitting low, which is kind of how they normally tend to sit. So I've now flipped the old head over, and I'm going to put a straight edge across the valves. And they're all fairly level, but certainly here you can see that inlet is a little bit lower than exhaust, as is that inlet there, this one here. But they're all relatively well in line. Whereas, I mean, look at this head. So what we now do, we're back to our original head, the ones from our bent Conrod engine. I don't know if you can see it there, with the straight edge across. We've got, on that exhaust valve, a huge gap between the straight edge and the valve tip, which says to me the valve must be deep into the chamber. And the concern there is, although the hydraulic lifters have got quite a bit of travel, with the inlet and exhaust valve heights being so different, we might be in a scenario whereby we can't get the lifters sufficiently in the middle of the travel to suit both valves. So definitely need to do a bit more investigating and see why these valves heights are so different. So what do we know? Well, if we look at two valves, one from our engine we got in bits, the one out our Cameron Green P6, we can see that the exhaust valve is only sitting on the very edge of the seat, whereas this one out of our head out of stalls, albeit it's a bit pitted, has got a much wider seat. And indeed, if you look at the seat pictures of the seat angles, there's a completely different profile. So I'm absolutely convinced this cylinder head has had new inserts fitted. Quite why they've left it with the valve height so different, I don't really know. You know, maybe the YTS boy did it. But something you have to bear in mind is that, you know, these engines went out of production 30 odd years ago, so there's every chance that whoever did these doesn't actually know what a V8 Rover engine even looks like. And they've asked if this was a full 2.8 3 litre V6 with individual rockers, which are adjustable, it really wouldn't be an issue, a dramatic difference in valve height. But with the shaft mounted rocker assembly and the hydraulic tappets, we've got to get this in the ballpark. Now, there is a huge amount of adjustment range within the hydraulic tappets, but I'm not sure they would ultimately cope with what we've got here. So we've got to try and even it up a bit somehow. So I think all I'm going to do is recut the seats in this head, drop the exhaust valves back in, get a decent seat all across that exhaust valve, not just on the very edge, and I think we'll be good to go. And on that bombshell, you know what to do: like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. See you later, guys.